1 to 4 family contract, paragraph 7F, completion of repairs and treatments. During many of your contracts, you're going to have negotiated repairs, typically during the option period, where the buyer discovers some things wrong with the property, and so they want the seller to fix those before closing, and they will do a repair amendment. Okay, a couple of things about that repair amendment. Make sure you're precise in the amendment as to what you want repaired. Just to give you an example, if there's a hole in the master bedroom wall that you want repaired, and you write repair hole in master bedroom wall, the seller might put up some sheetrock right in the hole, and now the hole's gone. Did the seller do what you asked them to do? Yes. But now there's a painted wall that's textured with a piece of raw sheetrock in the middle of it. So the proper way to write that would be to seller to repair the hole in the master bedroom wall, to install sheetrock, take float and texture and paint to match the rest of the wall, or paint the entire wall so that it matches, right? You see how specific that was? So when you're doing repair amendments, make sure they're specific, okay? Now, those repairs and treatments have to be done prior to the closing date, okay? That means if the closing date is the 10th, the repairs need to be done by the 9th by the seller. Now, as a caveat here, when I'm doing a repair amendment, I put in there all repairs to be done by X date. If closing is on the 10th, I want all the repairs done by the 5th so that we have time to go and inspect the repair. So the buyer can go and make sure the repairs are done to their liking, or they can get the inspector back out there or their trade guy back out there to make sure the repairs are done correctly. And the buyer has that right, but that only is going to happen is if you put a deadline for repairs to be done that are at least, for in my case, 5 days before closing. Okay. Now, the repairs have to be done prior to the closing date, and the seller obtain any required permits. So if there's permits required in the repair, the seller has to obtain those permits and show proof of the permits. The repairs and treatments must be performed by persons who are licensed to provide such repairs or treatments, or if no license is required by law, are commercially engaged in the trade of providing such repairs or treatments. What this means is the seller can't make the repairs. The seller's brother-in-law can't make the repairs, or the dad can't make the repairs. A licensed person, if it's electrical, an electrician. If it's plumbing, then it's a plumber. If it's a roofing issue, then a roofer, right? If it's painting or something like that, a handyman could do it, but they have to be commercially engaged, right? Commercially engaged in the trade of providing those repairs or treatments. It's important for your seller to understand that. So they might want to get an inspection done before they go to market so they can make all the repairs that they want to make. Once you're under contract, you have to pull permits, and the licensed person or a person who's commercially engaged has to do those repairs. Now, look at the second part here. The seller shall, that means they have to, provide buyer with copies of documentation from the repair person showing the scope of the work, what did they do, and payment for the work completed. So an invoice showing this is what we did, this is what was paid, okay? And at seller's expense, arrange for the transfer of any transferable warranties with respect to the repairs at closing. So if there's any work done that has a warranty, the seller has to make sure that warranty is transferable to the buyer. If the seller fails to complete any agreed repairs and treatments prior to the closing date, the buyer may exercise remedies under paragraph 15, which means the seller would be in breach of contract, or extend the closing date up to 5 days if necessary for seller to complete the repairs and treatments. So the seller has to understand if those repairs are completed prior to closing date, then the buyer has the ability to delay closing for up to 5 days so the seller can make those repairs and then the buyer can close. Now, oftentimes the buyer is not going to want to do that because they have financing and a financing deadline. Sometimes interest rates are locked in and the rate is expiring. So it's prudent for everybody to make sure those repairs are done before closing. And as I said before, put a date, all repairs to completed by this date, which for me, again, is typically 5 days before closing. This paragraph is important because a lot of sellers think they can do the repairs themselves. They think they have up until closing to get those done. If they're not done before and they're not done right, it's just going to delay closing and it's going to be a headache for everybody. Make sure you understand this. And one last thing I just want to point out. If the seller gets the inspection done before they go to market and they make the repairs, they might replace a kitchen faucet and it would just cost them the cost of the faucet. But if they're under contract, Now a plumber has to repair or replace that faucet. If a light switch is out, the seller might be able to replace that light switch if they know how to do it. But once you're under contract, an electrician has to repair that switch, and it goes from $1 from Home Depot to now that light switch is going to cost them $150 because that's probably the minimum an electrician's going to charge. I hope that helps understand this paragraph. Okay.